Hi, this is Shankar and Fighter Plus. Next video on the series, okay, CISSP series. Security documents, okay. We there's something called the governance risk and compliance. Okay, the governance risk and compliance is common for all the standards. Okay? There's a common misconception that whenever we say GRC, it is only for information security, and people speak GRC as something else. ISO 27001, okay, the implementation and assessment, okay, the continuous compliance, okay, this is a GRC. Okay, and then NIST CSF is GRC. Whenever you are maintaining, okay, the complaints, okay, it's called governance risk and complaints. Governance risk and compliance is with the quality aspect, quality also. So ISO 9001 has also got a governance risk and compliance. 22301 business continuity management system has got governance risk and compliance. Okay, ITIL, okay, 20K has got governance risk and compliance. ISO 27001, 27701, every standard has got governance, risk, and compliance. Okay. But of late, 2 or 3 years, I've seen people saying, I'm a certified GRC, a security GRC. Now, security is just one part of it. Okay. The organization requires everything. You go to the petroleum company, okay. The occupational health and safety, the environment management system, the quality, the security, everything is applicable for them. Okay. So their governance, risk, and compliance is on a broader perspective. Security and IT is one aspect of it. Okay. Now, what are the documentation you require for governance, risk, and compliance with respect to the CISSP is what we are going to have a look at here. Okay, this is Subramaniam Shankaran. This is a CISSP Made Simple series. Join me for learning CISSP. Okay, mail me on this email at training@itplus.org.uk or text me on +919940y87544 for your winning CISSP training mock examinations, hand holding you until you are actually certified. Now, first thing is actually a policy documentation. Okay, what is the policy? Policy is a very high level document that is actually available for us. Okay, we need to have policy documentation. So policy outlines, okay, what is the organization principles and goals? Okay, how the organization responds to a particular scenario. Okay, the organization stands on a particular issue. All these things are governed with the policy. There could be 40, 50 policies for the organization also, depending upon how big the organization is. There was once upon a time, okay, let's say 2007, 8, 9, those times, okay, because the BS 7799 got transformed to ISO 27001. Okay, so 2005 it was introduced. Before that was BS 7799. So during the initial days, okay, most of the organizations who went for ISO 27001 implementation, they had information security management system policy document or a handbook, like quality manual, ISMS manual is what they actually had, and all the the policy statements were available in the documentation, okay, in the manual, okay. But now things change. People want to show a big, because whenever there was a change to a particular policy, it was impacting the overall documentation. Okay, so we couldn't maintain the version because your manual or policy procedure, whatever guideline, they're all configurable item. So they removed, they split that into multiple chunks. They broke down into multiple chunks, and there was an acceptable usage policy, fair use policy, blah blah blah, etc. So that if you need to make a modification in a particular area, you can only change that policy documentation. Only those the version and release was actually getting changed. Okay, so the policy document is a mandate. Okay, there is no standard list of policy documentation you can actually have, but it should be applicable to the existing scenario. Okay, you cannot have a cloud security policy when your entire operations is on premises on a traditional IT environment. Okay, not on a cloud. So it should be specific and subjective, adaptive to your organization. So the example is, the characters is mandatory and broadly applicable because this is not technologically dependent. Okay, it's aloof. Okay, from all this, long-lasting, resistant to frequent changes, reflects on the organization's objective, compliance requirement, etc. Supposedly, you want to be compliant with respect to PCI DSS, with respect to GDPR, DPDP, PDPL, PDPA. Okay, now the standard which is available for you will dictate, okay, few requirements. Okay. So you need to follow that as a part of the policy. So if your standard changes, your policy will also change. Okay, so you are aligning the policy with respect to the standard is what the industry is following. Next one is a procedure. Step-by-step instruction to implement what is given in the policy document is the procedure. There are a lot of organizations which does not have many procedure documentation. Okay, for example, anything that is repeatable, you can have a procedure, password reset procedure or something like that. But anything that is ad hoc, okay, could be a part of the run book in the change record. Okay, the procedure for implementing a change is not a standard operating procedure, right? It's going to be something which is ad hoc. The requirements are also ad hoc. So you'll have the procedure for all the repetitive tasks, okay? But there could be a run book for something that is ad hoc, okay? That's a part of your change record. So procedures are more technologically dependent, okay? It's a more a technical documentation, as compared to the policy documentation, which is not a technical documentation. Okay, so the procedure is required for repetitive work. Okay, so people know how to do that. Okay? There could be a workflow, there could be step 1, 2, 3, whatever it is, there could be a flow chart. Okay, the representation could be the way that you actually like it, but it should be there. Okay, it's a mandatory, but more flexible than a policy. Today you are a Windows-based system, tomorrow it will be Linux, tomorrow it will be something else. Okay, the procedural document might vary, but the policy will remain the same. Password length is 8 character is 8 character, no? Irrespective of whether Windows, Linux, Unix, whatever it is, it's going to be 8 characters. Okay, so it provides an operational clarity. Instruction for changing the password, okay, is an example of a procedure. Next is the guideline. Guideline is how to implement a policy, could also be a guideline. For example, ISO 27001 is a certifiable standard. ISO 27002 is a guideline to implement 27001. Okay, in fact, if you are undergoing BRIT certifications, the assessment, ISO lead implementer training, okay, you'll be following the 27002 with few maturity practices here and there, okay, is what you will actually learn. Okay, now guideline is how to implement a policy or how to implement what is done in the policy or what is done in the standard. Okay, 27002 is to implement 27001. That means implementing a standard. Okay, you follow the guideline. Purpose of additional advice or suggestion. Okay, suggestion for situations where standards or procedures might not be applicable directly. More flexible, can change frequently based on organization needs. Okay, recommendation of creating a strong password using mix of letters, numbers, and special character. Okay. I always say something, security complaints is not security. There could be a situation where, the password length is 15 characters, 3 numerics, and 3 special characters, 3 uppercases. Okay, and it could be a very strong password, but people will write it down somewhere. Okay, but that defeats the purpose of security. So compliance is not always security. Okay, we need to implement security, derive compliance out of it. Don't do security for the sake of compliance. Okay, don't implement security for the sake of compliance. Implement security for the sake of securing your infrastructure. Okay, standard. Okay, a specific mandatory rule. Okay, and or benchmarks that define expected levels of quality, performance, functionality. So a lot of standards. Adhering to a standard is actually called as a compliance. There are standards that are, a mandatory standard. Okay, GDPR is a mandatory standard. ISO 27001 is actually a voluntary standard. Okay, then PCIDS is an industrial-based standard. HIPAA is also industry-based. There's a regulatory standard. Okay, so whenever you are following a complaint, okay, it could be a legal complaint between two organizations, or a voluntary complaint like ISO 27001, or industry-based complaints for PCIDS, or and regulatory complaints like a GDPR, DPDP, etc. Okay, so the standard is a set of requirements that is published by a regulatory body, and you have to follow it. Okay, it's on a very broad sense. Okay, in fact, people follow the standard, and the policies or guidelines are awards or aligned towards the standard. Okay, to facilitate the certification process. Okay, if you're going to implement security for the sake of certification process, this is the approach. Okay, standard comes first, then comes the policy, procedure, guidelines, etc. But if you are more serious about complaints, okay, to the quality or security or business continuity, you will be generating the policy based on your organization requirement, and you can audit yourself, okay, with the internal audit. Certification audit is not a mandatory one, okay, but there are industrial demands. In an RFP, they specifically ask, okay, are you an ISO 27001 certified organization? For that sake, yes. And most of the organization does not fail on the certification audit. There is a certificate, okay, but there could be some NCs here and there. Why? Because even for the certification body is a business, right? They're not doing it for charity, so they will not deny you a certificate, but they will also, and they'll give an NC, but always give you a certificate. So I always request the more weightage of our main focus should be on the internal audit. Your own employee is doing it. Empower them to do the audit. Okay, to maintain the compliance with respect to a standard. Okay, and what is the flow? Usually the policies are set and standards follow it. Sometimes standards are set and policies follow it. procedure and guideline, or definitely will be there. Okay. So with this, we come to the end of this video. Reach out to me on training@iiplus.org.uk or +91999405 87544 for your CISSP training. Okay. I'll handhold you until you are certified. Cheers. Bye-bye.